What's up, everybody? Welcome to or welcome back to the channel. Tonight we will be delving into the true crime case of Katherine Knight. Katherine Knight is an Australian murderer and the first woman in the country's history to be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. She was convicted for the murder of her partner, John Price, in February of 2000 and is currently imprisoned at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Center in New South Wales. Knight stabbed Price to death, skinned him, and then put his skin on a meat hook, which she had recently installed. She then cooked his head and parts of his body with the intention of feeding them to his own children, but was stopped by police after an employee of his went to check on him after he had not been at work that day. Katherine Knight was born and raised in an unconventional and dysfunctional family environment. Her mother, Barbara, had been married to Scottish-born Jack Rowan and lived with him in the small town of Aberdeen in New South Wales, Hunter Valley. They had 4 sons before Barbara began an adulterous relationship with Ken Charles Knight, a friend and co-worker of her then-husband. The local backlash forced Barbara and Ken to move to Moree. None of her sons went with her. The 2 eldest boys continued to reside with their father, and 2 younger sons were sent to be raised by an aunt in Sydney. Barbara had 4 additional children with Ken, including twin girls born in 1955. Knight was one of these twin daughters. In 1959, when Knight was 4 years old, Rowan died and his 2 older sons moved in with Barbara and Ken. Ken was a violent alcoholic who would rape Barbara up to 10 times per day. Barbara, in turn, often told her daughters intimate details of her sex life and how much she hated sex and men. Later, when Knight complained to her mother that one of her partners wanted her to take part in a sex act she did not want to perform, Barbara told her to put up with it and stop complaining. Knight claims she was frequently sexually assaulted by several members of her family, though not by her father, which continued until she was aged 11. Although there were doubts about the details, psychiatrists accept her claims, and the events have been largely confirmed by other members of the family. Barbara's great-grandmother was an Indigenous Australian from the Moree area who had married an Irishman. Barbara was proud of this fact and identified as Aboriginal. This was kept a family secret as there was considerable racism in the area at the time, and Barbara's descent was a source of tension for the children. Apart from her twin sister, the only person whom Knight was close was her uncle, Oscar, a champion horseman. She She was devastated when he committed suicide in 1969 and continues to maintain that his ghost visits her. The family moved back to Aberdeen that same year. When she attended high school, Katherine became a loner and is remembered by classmates as a bully who stood over her smaller pupils. She assaulted at least one boy at school with a weapon and was once injured by a teacher who was subsequently found to have acted in self-defense. By contrast, when not in a rage, Katherine was a model student and often earned awards for her good behavior. Upon leaving school at age 15, without having learned to read or write, she gained employment as a cutter in a clothing factory. 12 months later, she left to start what she referred to as her dream job, cutting up offal at the local upbringing. I probably butchered that, guys. My apologies. There, she was quickly promoted to boning and was given her own set of butcher's knives. At home, the knives were hung over her bed, so as Knight said that they would always be handy if I needed them, a habit she continued until her incarceration everywhere that she lived. Townsfolk in Aberdeen later remembered Katherine for physically threatening anyone who upset her. Knight first met co-worker David Stanford Kellett in 1973. Kellett engaged in heavy drinking, which stemmed from two dramatic incidents from his previous railway job in Coffs Harbour. First, when his best friend was killed in front of him in a shunting accident. Later, when he rescued injured occupants of a school bus in Kempsey, which had been struck by a train, killing 6 children. He eventually lost the job due to deteriorating behavior and performance, but he soon got work at the nearby Aberdeen Abattoir and became close friends with Katherine's brother. Often, if Kellett got into a fight, Katherine would step in and back him up with her fists. Katherine married Kellett in 1974. At her request, with the couple arriving at the service on her motorcycle, with a very intoxicated Kellett on the pillion. As soon as they arrived, Katherine's mother, Barbara, gave Kellett some advice. The old girl said to me to watch out. You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her, cheating on her. She'll fucking kill you. And that was her mother talking. She told me she got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. Can you imagine getting ready to marry somebody and having their mother say that about them? Yeah, no, not me. On their wedding night, Katherine tried to strangle Kellett. She later explained it was because he fell asleep after only having intercourse 3 times. The marriage proved particularly violent, and on one occasion, a heavily pregnant Katherine burned all of Kellett's clothing and shoes she changed her behavior to ingratiating Kellett and talked him into dropping the charges. In May of 1976, shortly after the birth of their first child, Melissa Ann, Kellett left Katherine for another woman and moved to Queensland, apparently unable to cope with the abuse. The next day, Katherine was seen pushing her newborn baby in a stroller down the main street, violently throwing the stroller from side to side. She was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth, where she was diagnosed with postnatal depression and spent several weeks recovering. After being released, Knight placed 2-month-old Melissa on a railway line shortly before the train was due. She then stole an axe, went into town, and threatened to kill several people. An unsheltered man, known in the district as Old Ted, who was foraging near the railway line, found and rescued Melissa. By all accounts, only minutes before the train passed. Katherine was arrested and again taken to St. Elmo's Hospital, but apparently she recovered and signed herself out the following day. A few days later, Katherine slashed the face of a woman with one of her knives and demanded she drive her to Queensland to find Kellett. The woman escaped after they stopped at a service station. However, by the time police arrived, Katherine had taken a young boy hostage and was threatening him with the knife. She was disarmed when police attacked her with brooms and was admitted to Morisset Psychiatric Hospital. Katherine told the nurses she had intended to kill the mechanic at the service station because he had repaired Kellett's car, which had allowed him to leave, and then kill both her husband and his mother when she arrived in Queensland. When police informed Kellett of the incident, he left his girlfriend and moved to Aberdeen with his mother to support Katherine. Katherine was released on August 9th of 1976 into the care of her mother-in-law, and along with Kellett moved to Ipswich, a city west of Brisbane, where she obtained a job at the Dinmore Meat Works. On March 6th of 1980, they had another daughter, Natasha Marie. In 1984, Katherine left Kellett and moved first to her parents' house in Aberdeen, then to a rented house in nearby Muswell Brook. Although she returned to work at the Abattoir, she injured her back the following year and went on disability pension. Since she no longer needed to rent accommodation close to her work, the government gave her a housing commission residence in Aberdeen. John Price was the father of 3 children when he began his affair with Katherine. Reputedly a terrific bloke, liked by everyone who knew him, his own marriage had ended in A series of assaults on Price culminated with Katherine stabbing him in the chest. Finally fed up, he kicked her out of his house. Really, it took getting stabbed in the chest. Good Lord. On February 28th, he stopped at the Scone Magistrates Court on his way to work and took out a restraining order in an attempt to keep her away from both himself and his children. That afternoon, Price told his co-workers that if he did not come to work the next day, it would be because Katherine had murdered him. Despite their pleas that Price should not return home, he stated he was afraid Katherine would kill his children if he did not. Price arrived home to find that Katherine, although not there herself, had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house. He then spent the evening with his neighbors before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. Earlier that day, Knight had bought new black lingerie and had videotaped all her children while making comments which have since been interpreted as crude will. She later arrived at Price's house while he was sleeping and sat watching television for a few minutes before having a shower. She then woke Price and they had sex, after which he fell asleep. At 6 a.m. the next day, a neighbor became concerned that Price's car was still in the driveway, and when he did not arrive at work, his employer sent a worker to see what was wrong. Both the neighbor and the worker tried knocking on Price's bedroom window to wake him, but they alerted police after noticing blood on the front door. Breaking down the back door, police found Price's body with Katherine comatose from taking a large number of sleeping pills. She had stabbed Price with a butcher's knife while he was sleeping. According to the blood evidence, he awoke and tried to turn the light on before attempting to escape, while Katherine chased him through the house. He managed to open the front door and get outside, but he either stumbled back inside or was dragged back into the hallway, where he finally died after bleeding to death. Later, Katherine went into Aberdeen and withdrew $1,000 from his account at an ATM. Price's autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed at least 37 times in both the front and back of his body, with many of the wounds extending into vital organs. Several hours after Price had died, Katherine Knight skinned him and hung the skin from a meat hook on the door to the lounge room. She then decapitated Price and cooked parts of his body, serving up the meat with baked potato, carrot, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy in 2 settings at the dinner table, along with a note beside each plate, each having the name of one of Price's children on it. She was preparing to serve his body parts to his children. A third meal was thrown on the back lawn for unknown reasons, and it is speculated that Katherine had attempted to eat it but could not. This has been put forward in support of her claim that she has no memory of the crime. Price's head was found in a pot with vegetables. The pot was still warm, estimated to be between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius, indicating that the cooking had taken Knight's initial offer to plead guilty to manslaughter was rejected, and she was charged on March 2nd of 2001 with murdering Price, to which she entered a plea of not guilty. Her trial was initially fixed for July 23rd of 2001, but it was adjourned due to her counsel's illness, and it was refixed for the 15th of October 2001. When the trial commenced, Justice Barry O'Keefe offered the 60 jury prospects the option of being excused due to the graphic nature of the photographic evidence, which 5 accepted. When the witness list was read out to the prospects, several more also dropped out, after which the jury was impaneled. Katherine Knight's attorneys then spoke to the judge, who adjourned to the following day. The next morning, Katherine changed her plea to guilty, and the jury was dismissed. It was then made public that Justice O'Keefe had been advised of the plea change the day before. He had adjourned the trial and then ordered a psychiatric assessment overnight to determine if Katherine understood the consequences of the guilty plea and was fit to make such a plea. Katherine's legal team had planned to defend her by claiming amnesia and disassociation, a claim supported by most psychiatrists, although they did consider her to be sane. 2 psychiatrists concluded that Katherine suffered from borderline personality disorder. No reason has ever been given for the guilty plea, and despite giving it, Knight still refused to accept responsibility for her actions. At the sentencing hearing, Katherine's lawyers requested that she be excused to avoid hearing some of the facts, but the application was refused. When Timothy Lyons took the stand and described the skinning and decapitation, Katherine became hysterical and had to be sedated. On November 8th, Justice O'Keefe pointed out that the nature of the crime and Katherine's lack of remorse required a severe penalty. He sentenced her to life imprisonment, refused to affix a non-parole period, and ordered that her papers be marked definitely never to be released. The first time that this had ever been imposed on a woman in Australian history. In June of 2006, Katherine Knight appealed the life sentence, claiming that a penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole was too severe for the killing. Justices Peter McClellan, Michael Adams, and Megan Latham dismissed the appeal in the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal in September, with Justice McClellan writing his judgment. This was an appalling crime, almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society. What do you guys think? What a whack job. Holy shit. I mean, I always say we always talk about crazies on here, but that was really, really morbid. Decapitation, skinning him, cooking him. I can't imagine having been the police officers that arrived on that scene to find that absolute horror show. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in with this evening. As always, the highest compliment you can pay to the channel is thumbs up, subscribe, comment, share. Our little channel is really starting to get on its feet. Thank you so much again, everybody.